are live recorded once again with the Think Fitness Life podcast, episode 12. My name is Matt Gluckman. I'm located in Salt Lake City, Utah. And my co-hosts are Eric Menchie and Mike Urso over there in Boston, Massachusetts, or some type of other city around Massachusetts. But whatever, it's Massachusetts. We got a couple announcements to start us off. And then today we have a really special episode talking about autoimmune dysfunctions, nutrition plans and diet plans that go along with it. We're going to talk about enzymes and just kind of go into everything autoimmune and digestive system related. Yeah, no emails, but seriously, please write us about a question or comment, concern. Maybe you want to tell us how bad we are. That's fine too. We're open to criticism. So Think Fitness Life, all one word, at gmail.com. That's Think Fitness Life, all one word, at gmail.com. Eric, you have an announcement you want to start off?
Yeah, so I'm kind of just reading through briefly, and it says that, well, we've all heard that exercise actually lowers the immune system. And, we thought about it for years, and new research is actually overturning that myth. I mean, this research has been around since the 1980s, but now they're saying that it doesn't actually suppress the immune system. More, the immune system shifts focus of let's say, the natural killer cells that are elevated that deal with infections. They actually move to maybe more prone places in the body. So say you're exercising, those cells might move towards the lungs or other places that are more susceptible at the time, which doesn't mean that all of a sudden these cells get destroyed because the immune function's down. So I just found that interesting, kind of online what we're kind of going to dive into in today about like autoimmune issues and stuff.
Yeah, very, very topical of you. I appreciate it.
He is Mr. Segway, right?
Right? I know. Urso, do you have anything? You had an announcement, I think?
Yeah. So there's this, I guess it's in like a research phase right now, or the prototyping phase, and it's a crowdsourcing fitness app. These researchers from the University of Washington and Seattle University, I guess, who have no financial stake in this company with this prototype, and essentially, they're looking to see like this app that would basically, you put in your information into a personal profile, and then it's not a personal trainer who actually writes a program for you, but it is actually another person who's on this app, right? And so they're doing this research to say they evaluated people who wrote just regular people who wrote a program who were part of the app for that individual, and then they had trainers who had bachelor's degrees in exercise science and physiology write programs for those people too, and they checked to see like, does that person get a similar result? And they said the people who had no training experience whatsoever and wrote those programs got just as good as a result with their program as the trainers did. And I'm very skeptical. If something like this can work, or I'd need to a little bit more behind it. But I guess there were 46 participants in the study, and it's just, what are your guys' thoughts on this? It's really fascinating to me.
My first thought is like, I would assume that the profile for somebody who's using such a process or application is one that enjoys shortcuts. I'm completely anecdotal and completely stereotyping and doing everything that you probably shouldn't do, but I'm assuming that the person that would typically use that would be a non-consistent gym goer who's maybe not super all about performance and working out 5-6 days a week and meal prepping and all that stuff, so that because of their starting position, it really doesn't matter what they do. Like, you've seen people sit in front of you who said, oh yeah, I haven't exercised in the last 10 years. You're like, oh my God, this is going to be awesome. You're going to get hooked. Like, you're going to see so many changes. You're going to feel so many physiological changes. You're going to love it. Like, that'd be my first thought, is just these are probably a lot of people who would see results from any program anyway, because they're like moving and doing something on a consistent nature.
Yeah.
But yeah,
You would also think like too, like the average Joe Jane is probably coming up with exercises for them that are just like the basic fundamental exercises, which a lot of times we know for beginners are probably the best thing for you.
What they
Right. Whereas
need.
a trainer may come
Yeah.
up with something that may be too elaborate for that person. Um,
Yeah, because they want to like
yeah,
wow the
or
person or
well, not even
something.
that. Just it could be too perfectly programmed that it may be too hard to follow at times, because you don't have that face to face
Yeah.
meeting with somebody. So while you're getting all this data and you can see what that person may be like on paper, it's going to be really hard to get a sense for them without actually being in front of them physically and talking to them. You know what I mean? Because there's an emotional component. Like, is this person going to be able to follow directions? And if somebody's programming out basic movement patterns for that person, I feel like that's probably going to be more effective than like the perfect training program, based on what you see on paper.
Yeah, I'd agree. Interesting though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that probably, like you said, along with the programming being intricate, it's like at the level when you have been working out consistently for years and you have a clean nutrition and you're still trying to reach new heights, it really does require to not just treat the client, but not treat the client in terms of just fitness in the gym, but treat the client as a whole and looking at sleep, repetitive movements through the day, through the week, obviously all previous injury, previous exercise, diet, all that stuff, to really look at what you have to tweak, to make those bigger changes, make those bigger outcomes. So kind of like what you said. I mean,
Yeah.
um, it
I
is
mean, with
interesting
the
though.
big
It's
question,
it's
like,
it's
will it
pretty
put
cool.
trainers out of business? I mean, not
I
anytime
don't think
soon.
so.
No, because
Absolutely
at the end of
not.
the day,
Not
like, it's so much
absolutely not.
easier to ignore an app on your cell phone than it is like somebody who you're, interacting with, well, live and in person, like a personal trainer. It's just completely different type of motivation and accountability. So, you know,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna get with it. Is like there's like a population of people who have no accountability whatsoever. There's a population of people who are like semi self starters but need some sort of direction, and then there's people who are just like intrinsically motivated to just keep going and push themselves. So I feel like it'll work for a subcategory, you know what I mean? Like a good portion of the population, and good for them. That's how you got to do is pick a market and niche it out and master it. But I don't think it's going to be for everybody. So I don't see it taking trainers out of
Mike, how long
business.
did it say the study was for?
it's a good question. I don't know how long it was for. I do know it was 46 different participants, and they divided them into three different, um, categories, essentially, or three different groups. But
You almost wonder if, like I said, going trainers out of business, at some point these exercise programs are going to be the same, redundant. You need that progression overload and stimulus that, now I don't know if this app is going to give that, or
right.
who's going to write what, but I don't think there's going to come to a point where these people are going to get advanced enough where they need something more rather than just basic programs. But for what it shows to me is basic programming, you give it to 46 people, will change their physical fitness, which is great.
Well, and form and all that stuff too that you don't have a chance to monitor unless you're with that person. Like, just think about how much easier it's going to be to injure yourself if you're programming loads and things like that for that person as well without ever seeing them move. I'm very, you know what I mean? That to me, I don't want that hanging over my head.
Yeah, a lot of gray area there.
Yeah, that's a tough one. But
These apps are popular.
and then mention you make a good point too about like, yeah, everyone's gonna see results in the beginning, but they're gonna all plateau. Everyone's gonna plateau at some point. And what are they gonna do as a company? What's the company gonna do to help remedy
But
that?
I
That's
get what these a
interesting.
lot of apps do is they target these very beginners, and I would think it's sort of like a Planet Fitness that I expect to tail off, and then I expect these people to come back.
They just care about initiation, right? Right, right. So is the app is a monthly fee,
Yeah, it's a subscription like on your iTunes. And just, yeah, while we're
and
on that point, yeah,
is it also
what's up?
is it also a one time
I
fee to
don't believe so.
start?
I think it's just like $7 a month or something like that. But
Okay,
like, it's pretty hard to
gotcha.
unsubscribe from your iTunes, if you don't know how to unsubscribe from a monthly app. There's like a whole
Mm.
bunch of different things you have to go through to get to the subscriptions. So they don't make it easy.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like how big gyms work, like the Planet Fitness. They're hoping that only 30% of their members ever show up at a given time. So they just pump out memberships because they're banking on that statistic so that they can keep a steady flow in their facilities. But yeah, kind of the same along the same lines of with this app. If people sub for a subscription and only 30% use it, that means they got 70% of people generating revenue and not causing them any issues, running into any being like a problem
Right.
client or something. So it's pretty interesting. It's all about revenue models.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the subscription model
at the end of
is
the
the
day.
best. So as a consumer, you have to be cautious of subscription
Mhm.
models and be cognizant of your usage.
It's all about the money. I mean, how much do they actually care about physical fitness rather than, hey, can we make something that works that drives revenue?
Oh man, we talked about. I think I sent you guys a message a week or so ago about obesity and just the money making. Like obesity is a double victory for consumerism, right?
Yes.
I
Yep.
mean, you
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
you eat a lot, right? And then you have to buy diet products because you eat too much, and so
yeah.
you're doubly, dually contributing to economic growth. Obese people are so. Yeah.
Yeah, and take it a step further. You get people like the USDA and FDA saying vegetable oil is fine for you and margarine's fine for you, and in fact, like you shouldn't even be putting that stuff in your body or
Oh
cooking with it
no,
at all.
they're all manufactured. It's crazy.
And it just all comes down to politics. So it's a shame. We could go into a whole nother topic for a different day, but you know that's what's great about what we're doing here, people. Is we're just trying to educate everybody. If you're listening, we're just trying to empower you. We're trying to give you the tools you need. We're trying to make you ask the right questions because ultimately, the world we live in, you'd expect like labeling and marketing to inform the consumer. But in the world we live in today, it's just trying to pull the
Matt,
wool
you ready
over
for
your
this one?
eyes. Yeah, go for it.
So with that, talking about, big companies and stuff, let's kind of tell me how that plays a role into how that affects this whole craze of autoimmune diseases and, gut issues where they're pushing this crap food. How does that affect the other side, like us?
All right, I like that. That was pretty good. But I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to ask you to describe to our listeners. Maybe you two can handle this one because I don't have the technical knowledge or background to explain it. But basically, start to finish, food outside the body into the mouth and digested out of the system. Can you explain how it works on the cellular and scientific level?
Ooh, put on the
Long
spot.
pause.
Don't have
Long
any
awkward
takers.
pause.
Is anybody in the room anymore? Did everybody just leave?
How in depth do you want to get with this?
All right, so I'll start off and you continue. So um, digestion starts in the first bite. So our brain is sending signals to release certain enzymes based upon the stimulus that was given to us, and we have different enzymes that are aiding in the digestive process. And take it away.
So it starts in the mouth. Once food kind of hits the tongue and the saliva, you're already getting digestion right there. And that's where a lot of people will take these powdered supplements. And I tell them you're not actually getting the quality of the powders because before that even reaches your intestines, it's getting broken down by the enzymes in the mouth and in the stomach. So from the mouth, it goes to the stomach, where you have a pretty acid based environment in the stomach that basically will break down every kind of food, protein, fat, carbohydrate into these smaller molecules. And at the end of the day, they're going to try to break them down into amino acid, glucose, and triglycerides and multiple forms of cholesterol and fat to pass through the small intestine. And once you get into the small intestine, that's where everything gets absorbed. We're talking through the villi and the microvilli. Is all your nutrients are getting absorbed and then passed through the bloodstream through that. I mean, that's got to be the biggest place of absorption in the body, and that's where I think a lot of issues with immune diseases starts in the small intestine. Then through the large intestine, that's more just kind of water and all that stuff getting passed through, and then, well, you whatever you don't use, you push it out as waste. Did I miss anything?
No, that was perfect. I just wanted like a good basic definition of what a healthy sounding digestive system looks like. And I guess probably the only difference of say having an autoimmune disease like um, Crohn's or ulcerative, more so ulcerative colitis. We'll stick with that one because that's the one I have and that's the one I know most about. But I know for a fact is it's um, you trigger the inflammation in your body, but you can't turn the switch off. And um, Crohn's is a little bit different. Crohn's is a different animal. I know that Hashimoto's is another autoimmune disorder, but that's one where the sort of like the antibodies go right after the thyroid gland and they cause chronic inflammation. So again, not being able to turn off that inflammatory response. Let me
So
see.
do we should we just kind of describe autoimmune, disorder or disease and what that is exactly? Like what's the underlying?
Yeah, go ahead and
Well,
give it a basic definition. Give it a
yeah, so
basic
it's basically
definition.
like your body has these like elevated antibodies that kind of attack their own tissues in a way. And so um, it's basically just like your body's in this constant immune reaction, giving off histamine, and therefore creating this inflammatory process that just won't shut off. Um, and we can go into a little bit later, why that is, and the permeable, intestines and poor gut microbiome and things like that. But the general idea is that the body's essentially attacking itself, like its own immune system is attacking itself.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it because um, they all three have some sort of effect to the lining of your digestive system. And bigger picture, if you think about your digestive system, it is literally the organ in your body that is able to interact with the entire world around us. So it is your integration tool. You as a human, then the world around us, and your immune system is like the translating piece between everything outside the system and everything in your system. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but when they talk about um, autoimmune diets and autoimmune protocols and nutrition, they're talking about reducing foods that are known to cause inflammation. And that's one where it gets kind of a gray area because you talk to a lot of professional GI doctors, they'll say, no, nutrition doesn't have to do
Mm,
with it. You talk to a lot of people who have colitis or Crohn's or um, even most of the doctors who are a little bit older and really see the bigger picture, they'll say it has everything to do with nutrition. And now it's back to what I said about being, in a divorce, there's two true stories, his side and her side. But the point is yeah, it's a little bit of both. Like, yeah, it was the food, yeah, it was the body, and it was just about the balance, right? Everything in moderation. At the end of the day, and I'll go into this a little bit later. I want to talk about it, but essentially, we have enzymes to help with specific breakdown of specific things. So if we say we'll use lactase as a good example, although that one's a special scenario one. Let's put a little asterisk around lactase. So lactose, milk sugars, lactose intolerant is pretty common. I'm going to stop and say that asterisk is because at youth we are given a lot more of these enzymes, and in particular, lactase is one that is more prevalent in our bodies and systems at a young age. And then as we get older, we don't produce it nearly as much, and we have trouble producing it. Um, but so I say that I have a certain amount of lactase in my system. That's the enzyme. Then I put lactose into the system. I drink some milk. If that ratio is off, if I have more milk in my system than the enzyme, then I'm going to trigger inflammation because now I don't have enough um, excuse me, I'm going to trigger damage to my digestible wall because I don't have enough of the enzymes to break down the sugars appropriately. So again, it's a little bit of both. It's not only about what was put into the system, and it's not only about the environment of the system. It's a little bit about both. And it comes back to like everything we'll say about nutrition. I'm sure every time we'll talk about nutrition, we'll literally at least say the phrase everything in moderation one time. So it does become a balancing act, and it does become about learning about your body's digestive routines and the enzymes that your body has and maybe doesn't have. And that will tell you more specifically what is causing
And
poor
some people are
digestion,
born, I
essentially.
mean, we're all human, but everyone has a kind of a different ratio of enzymes. So someone like
Right.
moderation, I don't hate it, but then people kind of ask, well, how come you can have a glass of milk and I can't have a glass of milk? That's still moderation. Correct, it is moderation, but people have to know, and this is through kind of figuring out what works for you, what you feel like. Some people just can't handle, a cup of milk. Some people can't handle 3 cups of milk. So the intolerant level could be different depending on the enzyme in the body. So just know, people listening out there, that you could have completely different enzymes from birth than someone else. And then as time goes, certain enzymes start to
Oh,
decline in the system. So we become a little more, I wouldn't say intolerant, but a little more susceptible to these kind of ailments that these certain
no,
foods bring.
I'm actually really happy you said that because so many people, we all want to kind of know what the answer is. We all kind of want that quick fix, and we just sort of look to experts. We look to other people who have gone through it, and we say, okay, we'll just repeat what they do, and that's a great starting point. That's by all means a great way to start learning about it and start experimenting with your body. But you have to have that mindfulness piece and awareness piece to your own body because kind of like what Menchie was saying, everybody's it's a unique footprint. Everybody's digestive system is a unique footprint. Even everybody's ulcerative colitis. I talk to people. I have like 3 clients right now who have ulcerative colitis, and I tell them every time we talk, and I tell them what I did or what worked for me or whatever. I'm always stressing like your ulcerative colitis is your ulcerative colitis. There are hundreds of different enzymes and bacteria that are involved in digestion, involved in interacting with the world around us. Again, remember that digestive system is our translating piece between the outside world and our system. And you have to remember that not only are there hundreds of these enzymes and bacteria, but then there's hundreds of different mutations to those bacteria and enzyme. So the possibilities for what you could be experiencing under the realm of the big category IBD, inflammatory bowel disease, could be endless. What works for you and what doesn't work for you could be completely reversed for somebody else with the same exact symptoms and the same exact medical diagnosis. So it's important to take your body, your digestive system in particular, and try to listen to its feedback. You ate something, you feel bloated, you feel backed up, you're burping more. That's telling you something. Don't just, oh man, whatever. Don't just write it off. You have to really start to dig deeper and think and maybe even look back sometimes and pinpoint, oh, you know what? It was when I ate that. It was after I started eating that I noticed I was feeling pretty poor the rest of the day. So I'm glad you brought that up, Eric. That's a great point. That it's just so unique, and everybody, it's like a footprint. It's like a fingerprint. It's different for every person, and varying degrees, varying
Yeah,
levels. So it all
Well, and
plays
this
a
is
role.
why, oh, I was just going to say, this is why I think you need to also, the way conventional medicine is set up, it's a very kind of blanket approach to how they, treat that. And because everyone is so individualized, it takes an individualized like treatment plan for each person. So meaning like we have to do a deep kind of diagnosis and a lot of testing and assessing to see like what is going on, what is the profile of that person's kind of microbiome and all these other issues that are going on inside, and then be able to make recommendations and stuff based on that, because more individualized recommendations, because right now it's like let's throw this medication at it to fix it, and then that's going to suppress this, but it's going to give you, these type of side effects, which then you're going to have to take something to, mediate those like side effects. And so it's kind of just like, but at the end of the day, there's like this person's taking 5 to 10 different pills for, irritable bowel syndrome, and really all they needed to do is, change a couple things in their diet, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, you have to remember that the Western medical society is a business in the end of the day, and they're going to make decisions that drive business. And one of their decisions for understanding how a medicine is going to respond to the population, the rest of the world, right, is basically there's this term called like rule of thirds. Like the medicine really just has to work a third of the time. So when they have a control group and experiment groups, like they always find a third of the time for a successful medicine, right? A third of the time the medicine works. A third of the time the symptoms get worse, and a third of the time it does nothing. So as long as it fits that category, it can be released to the public essentially.
Does that sound absurd to anybody
Because
else? I mean, doesn't that
what was
sound
it?
absurd to everybody? I mean, do you think about
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. Absolutely. But if you think it from a business standpoint, it's so that they make changes, they start taking action, and they don't just say, oh, well, we haven't figured this out yet. Because otherwise, yeah, they wouldn't have figured it out in terms of adding something else to the stimulus. They would have figured it out as we have and said, yeah, there is a cure to that. You got to be preventative. You got to be proactive. You got to do X, Y, and Z ahead of time next time so that there is no next time, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely.
But yeah, it is pretty ridiculous. But man, I was just ranting and raving a little bit there, kind of got us off topic. So back to enzymes. There are three main ones that I want to bring up. There's lactase, which helps break down the milk sugars. There's diastose, sucrase, and invertase. And these are all part of the amylase category, and they are important to break down carbohydrates, starches, sugars, both any like complex sugar and any like fructose, any quick sugar from like a fruit.
So that would make
So
sense to me. That's the one
it's
that's in the saliva, right? Like when you first take a bite,
Yes.
I would think, right?
the sucrase
Amylase,
is.
the enzyme.
Oh yeah, amylase. Yeah. And so kind of like when people say, "Oh, sugar in fruit is bad," that's back to the fructose, because fructose needs to be broken down by sucrase, the enzyme sucrase. So if you overstimulate with fructose, you throw in too much fruit for your breakfast. You have a banana, a handful of strawberries, an apple, and then you throw in some blueberries, whatever. You're making a shake. You're probably throwing off your sucrase enzyme so much that you've now depleted it, and then it's going to get stuck. The fructose is going to get stuck, cause poor digestive, and cause damage to the lining of your intestinal wall. So again, it is a little bit of a balancing act. Should I just keep going?
This is going to be
Is this
yours.
basically like my hour to shine?
You have a lot to say, so I don't even know where to jump in.
No, it's cool. Like I'm just trying to
Go
make
for
it
it,
all
man.
make sense, like bigger picture stuff, and it's important. It's important to try to bring it back,
Yeah.
and make it sense on like a layman's terms as well, because that's the only way I understand it.
Well, there's a couple
Um,
things. So
but
I'll speak from some personal experience, which is I have eczema,
yeah,
right? And eczema has been determined, eczema and psoriasis, most even I think it's very recent, that the research for the first time has shown that it is an autoimmune disease. And so it is something that essentially is connected to gut health and poor enzyme, um, uh, um, whatever. But essentially, like I'm at a loss for words. Um, but essentially, I do notice it for with certain things. We talked about what are some of those foods, right, that can trigger some of these reactions or some of these responses. Dairy, we talked about being one of them. Obviously gluten and wheat is a big one, if not the biggest one, that triggers a lot of these symptoms for autoimmune diseases. For me, it is absolutely dairy. If I go hard on dairy at all, or even really more than just like a little dollop in my like of half and half of my coffee in the morning, I will get breakouts all over my hands and in different areas of my body. Red, patchy, inflamed skin. I think they call it atopic dermatitis, AD, and essentially, I get these like scaly like patches. And one of the things too that I learned, I was reading or listening to a podcast. I want to say it was on Bulletproof Radio with Dr. Thomas O'Brien. He wrote a book called The Autoimmune Fix, and he basically talked about like you have this like when your body has excess amounts of histamine in your body because it's trying to fight off some sort of reaction. Your immune system is trying to fight off a reaction. You turn red in different areas of your body, and so like you guys have seen people who get like rosacea, like which is that like
Yep.
red cheeks and like red face. That's essentially your body trying to fight off some sort of inflammation that's occurring in that moment. And so anytime you have excess amounts of that histamine in your system, you're going to see red. And he had this really interesting way to test. And you could do this right now if you want. If you just lift up your shirt and then on your, like right on your belly, you want to scratch your stomach 3 times. So just do 3 swipes, like with your nail. Don't like, not hard to try to break your skin, but what you want to do is like enough to give yourself a good little kind of scrape along the skin. And then you want to
I broke my
go out,
nail. No, I'm just kidding.
because your abs are so rock hard. Um, no, but wait 15 to 30 seconds, right? And if you get like these red streaks that show up from that, which I am getting them right now, that means that your body is right now carrying excess histamine in your system, which means you have some sort of kind of low level inflammation going on. And then another stat that he threw out, which I thought was really fascinating, was because one of the questions Dave Asprey asked is like, clinically, like how many people have an autoimmune disease? And he said clinically, when tested properly, 6 to 7 out of 10 people show up on tests with elevated antibodies in their system that is attacking some sort of tissue. 60 to 70
I
percent of people have some form of an autoimmune disease when they test it in the clinic.
I believe it. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's really interesting because um, I remember being a young kid and asking my dad, like, why is my skin turning red? And he was like, oh, you have dermographic skin. I just looked it up right now, and dermographic skin is like, it's pretty obvious if someone has it. And yeah, I must have just had elevated histamine levels since a young age. This is purely anecdotal, but talk about 60 to 70% of the population has an autoimmune dysfunction. I mean, I can't help but think that it's probably due to some of the man-made um, compounds and chemicals
Absolutely.
that are put out into the
Oh,
world that end up back into our
actually, that
systems.
yeah, I think there's like
Yeah,
probably um, 2 to 3 contributing factors. Well, let's say 3, but I'm going to say the main 2 are probably what's on your fork, so like what you're eating, right? That's one of the biggest
what
things,
you're
and then
eating.
and then
Yeah,
the air. So what you're breathing. Think about like um, mold, which can be toxic, and all those, it's basically like poison that you're inhaling. Are and both of those things are environment, right? These are not organism issues. These are not something wrong with the individual. These are something wrong with the inputs that we're getting, meaning like the food that we're taking in, and then the air that we're breathing in, and that's affecting ourselves internally. And then I was going to add the third thing, meaning like just the health of your gut, which we've been talking about. That's one of the
yeah.
big ones. And I think like if you can somehow like focus on those 3 things, like, get better quality air, eat, foods that are going to be more, um, better designed for your own biochemistry, and then focus on fixing the health of your gut microbiome. I think, really you can kind of maybe not heal completely some of these things, but
Yep.
I think that you can dramatically reduce
You
some
could, and
symptoms,
it's they
right? I mean,
there's research out there that
absolutely.
says no, not right away, but after
I
periods of
think.
time, people
Sorry, go
go on
ahead.
probiotics or eat certain foods that they can kind of replenish their gut health. And it says it can take up to 10 years for someone who uses heavy pharmaceuticals. And this is where Matt, you mentioned earlier, these companies give drugs. I mean, drugs are one of the biggest thing that can destroy the gut microbiome, and it can take a long time to recover from that. And I had no control of it, but a lot of us were introduced to that at a young age with sickness, illness, or even in the hospital. So yep.
Antibiotics, yeah.
I
They
was
hand
just
them
gonna
out like
say,
candy.
our parents were trigger happy with antibiotics before they understood its true cause and what it
Well,
does
don't they,
completely. And
yeah.
unfortunately,
Go ahead.
Hmm.
Well, keep
go
in
ahead.
mind too, the foods that we're eating, they're feeding antibiotics to these animals, right? To keep them healthy from getting sick because these
Right.
animals can't move. They're stuck in these, so they're developing diseases and things too because they don't have the ability to go, like a cow doesn't have the ability to go out and graze in the grass in a in like a field like it's meant to. And they're penned up. They can't move. They develop these diseases because they try to just force feed them grains. Their guts are all a disaster. They feed them antibiotics, and then we're ingesting that because there's absolutely that stuff is seeping into the meat that that animal is
Yeah.
producing.
Oh,
And
for
so
sure.
we're getting it in low
For
level
sure.
doses there chronically if you're not eating grass fed organic meat. So you're getting it twofold with the
Yeah.
medications you're putting in and the foods you're eating. So it's like the double whammy.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so many things to talk about, but yeah, I mean, anything that we look at, people do these cleanses or these detoxes, like that's you got to remember that you're not just gonna you can't just walk through your digestive system and be like, all right, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad, you all gotta go. It just wipes out the whole thing. You're actually depleting a lot of your good enzymes and your good bacteria as well anytime someone does a detox or a cleanse. And same thing kind of along the lines of these antibiotics is like we look at something that is um, and it's all relative too, because yeah, penicillin basically won the war for us, right? Because we had it, and our the people we were fighting didn't have it. But you have to always measure the costs and the benefits, because with antibiotics, like yeah, if you're about to die or if you have a sick young child, like a baby or something, you got to save their life. But at the same time, you are absolutely destroying the microbiome, their translation from the outside world to the internal system. And like you guys were talking about, there's ways to heal it. There's ways to come back from it. Um, yeah, I guess that'll get me into the next thing. So, there's ways to heal it and ways to replenish. And some of the two, I'll stick with two. I'll stick with these two major ones. One of them is just as simple as fasting. That sounds crazy, but essentially you're telling your body, work with what you got. And to put that into a better perspective, we 2018 human beings, we eat 3 meals a day, if not maybe more, 7 days a week. Now your digestive system is now working for anywhere from how long does
Yeah.
digestion take, guys? You guys would know better than I. Well, it's like what do they say? Like 2 to 4
Yeah, it
hours for
depends on
digestion to be
it depends on
complete.
the meal, but I also think in addition to that, the energy cost of the digestive process is very big. I mean, the brain, I think, takes about 25% of your energy to run the brain. Digestion takes another
Yeah,
25% to run just the digestive
really.
process. So
Okay.
that's a
Okay.
big hog of your energy, right?
Yeah. And my point that I'm trying to get at too is like, so your digestive system is working for anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, 3 times a day, 7 days a week. When's
Yeah.
its rest period? I mean, if you somehow put a workout program to do that, you'd have to be insane, or maybe you have a gym and at your house and you work from home, and you worked out for an hour. We'll say you just worked out for an hour just to be nice, right? Well, you work out your musculoskeletal system for an hour, 3 times a day, 7 days a week. You would reach a point where you are no longer getting better and making physical progress. You'd plateau, and you might even be making a point where you are physically actually at a decline quicker because you're just doing more and more damage and you don't let your body enough time for the
Well,
recovery phase.
yeah. And
So
think about this
go
too.
ahead.
Like, imagine you were working your job 365 days a year with no break, no days off, no rest, right? No vacation,
Yeah. Yeah, that
no vacations,
accumulation.
right?
Yeah.
But think about, like, we go on vacation because we need to reset our bodies, and then think about how much more you enjoy your job when you go back to it after taking a week or two off, right? It's like, oh God, I feel refreshed, I feel like reborn, my body feels better, I feel much more relaxed. Well, your digestive system needs that too. Like, you need to give it a vacation and allow it
Absolutely.
to, let it let it reset itself, let itself kind of recalibrate. And there's no better way to, like you said, to do that than fasting. And there's so many different ways you can do intermittent fasting, you can do 24-hour
Yeah.
fast, you can do like a multiple day fast. I wouldn't say go for a week fast on your first trial,
No, yeah,
but
exactly. Like
just
work
small
up to
breaks.
it.
Yeah,
Start with, yeah, like for me specifically, I do it on day. Like I specifically do it for the weekend because I'm not going to require a lot of glycogen production. I'm not going to require a lot of performance out of my day. I might go for a hike or something, but the point is that I'll from Friday dinner to Saturday whenever I get hungry, I won't eat anything, and sometimes I'll make it all the way to dinner time on Saturday, and I always feel a lot better. Um, you have to give your body these break periods not only to rest the digestive system, but you get the amazing, miraculous benefit of what's called autophagy. And again, this is back to just saying, body, deal with it. This is what you got. And essentially, your body has a limited amount of resources. And I think autophagy kicks in after like 6 hours or something like
I
that,
think
but
it's
don't
like
quote me on that.
actually like
I'm
at
sure.
least
But
I'm
12.
sure for
Well,
each person,
it's like
same thing.
12
There might be
is
hours,
some
it?
12
It's
differences,
hours
more?
but
into a
Okay,
fast.
gotcha.
I bet you that plays a big role in that.
And like your body can learn to get better at getting into autophagy quicker or something like that. Like the more you do it, yeah, it's like and it also play like the more you do it, like a learned reflex, you'll get better at it. But essentially, the autophagy is survival of the fittest at the cellular level. You have the resources in your body, and you have sick or dying cells, and you have healthy, strong cells. And your body just says, "All right, well, we don't have enough resources for everybody, so sick and dying." Cell apoptosis, go kill yourself. And then here's strong and healthy cells. You get all the resources. So it literally is survival of the fittest. And when I say that, I mean it's making the sick and dying cells trying to take them out of the picture, and it's taking the strong, healthy cells and making them better.
It's amazing that our own bodies have a system to replenish and basically keep itself running without us doing it.
And certain cultures have known about
It's
this
it's
for
a
a long time, right?
Yeah.
Ramadan, all these different,
yeah
religions and things, and just finally
yeah
making its way into the. I mean, I would say it's kind of just scratching the surface of mainstream in the West, right? It's not like not everybody knows about it, but I feel like with social media, somebody has seen it run across their news feed about the benefits of it and what it can do for your health and curing type 2 and all these other things. But I mean, fasting is probably, I mean, one of the best,
Agreed.
most natural ways you can sensitize your insulin, right? It's like there's no
yeah
there's other ways to do it, but like naturally, it's probably the best way.
And if for our listeners, there's a great resource out there called The Complete Guide to Fasting by a doctor named Jason Fung. And I believe the other name is like Jim Moore or something like that. Jimmy Moore. That's a great resource for about fasting. But if you taking it to the extremes, I always like to look at the extremes and learn from them. Um, they did a documentary on Amazon Prime about fasting, and they had people in their study with cancer. they were doing like long fasts though. Like I think some of these people had like 30-day fasts, which is insane in my view, because that's not something I feel like I could wrap my head around. But these people were getting cellular regeneration. They were gaining weight, and we know that when you have cancer, typically what happens is your body is breaking itself down, and you're usually losing weight. So they were actually sort of defeating the cancer. I think they were talking about how they were coupling it with other treatments as well. It wasn't just the fasting, but they used the fasting as a tool to help the body get on the page of, hey, let's start strengthening the strong cells and getting rid of the sick and
Did you
diseased
hear about this
cells.
study? It was that guy who fasted for 382 days. They talked about it on the Joe Rogan podcast. I think Rob Wolf talked about it before. But essentially, this guy, he was 456 pounds, and he was a medically supervised fast. Um, he fasted for 382 days under these like supervision of these researchers. It's the longest fast that's ever been recorded. He lost 276 pounds during this fast, so he weighed in at like 180 pounds, I think it was. He had no ill symptoms, and what was the crazy thing about it was like his skin essentially like ate itself and shrunk too. So he, you would think a guy going from 456 pounds to 180 pounds, he's got to have like loose skin hanging off him, like ridiculous. He had none of that because the all those dead cells basically ate themselves and cannibalized himself, like you said. That is another benefit that now that's purely anecdotal, like about that happening, but I would imagine there's other cases out there that have experienced the same thing, with people who have lost a dramatic amount of weight like that on a fast. I just find that really fascinating.
Yeah, just what the body can do, especially obviously with that much weight, that the energy in the body can just feed off of itself, and that's where, like Matt said, that this organism on this planet just was like, hey, you're gonna die or survive, and it was like, hey, I'm gonna survive and thrive, and I'm gonna figure out a way to do it.
Yeah, there are so many systems in our body that we don't fully grasp or understand or know why they do it. And I always like to look at things that aren't in use anymore in our body because they fascinate me, and I look at like why was that around? Maybe like what purpose did it serve? And like the we have our tonsils don't really play much of a role anymore. There's another organ. Your spleen doesn't. No, not your spleen. There's something else that doesn't really play much of a role. Like your coccyx, like your tailbone, that has really no role. Some people think it helps balance you, but it's just funny how everything had a different relevance based upon time periods that we were alive as an organism.
Well,
Um, yeah,
You have
so I
to
want
go
to go
there.
back real quick. There was one other thing I wanted to say about curing yourself. We talked about fasting being that major one, as simple as it is, and the other one is actually called fecal microbiota
ooh,
transplant, and
you did,
it's
didn't you? Didn't
oh,
you?
absolutely the the
Gross out the audience.
FMT
Why don't you explain that one, Matt?
procedure.
What is that? What is
It
a fecal transplant?
It's literally a saline solution and collected stool of a healthy donor that is then procedurally by colonoscopy or endoscopy or sigmoidoscopy or enema, whatever you want, it's going back up there um, to get into your system, get it into that translating piece, and then it learns, right? It like downloads the enzymes required uh, to interact with the rest of the world. It's like basically, it's literally like taking. It's like if so, I have ulcerative colitis. Menchie doesn't. Menchie has a 2018 uh, computer, and mine is like back in 2002. So I need to update my software so it can interact with the internet and the rest of the world and open up web pages that it's not recognizing. And so it's like literally updating like the firmware. Um, and it's so fascinating because in some of the early studies of this, not only does it replicate the gut biome, but it can completely remaneuver it. So like they had a woman who was obese, and we know that for a fact that it's proven in studies that obese people have a different biome than say uh, your average person that fits a BMI protocol, like on the bell curve. So you take an obese woman, and her daughter had C. diff, so that's a bacteria that is associated with ulcerative colitis and Crohn's, and like it's a very violent one though. So she did the fecal microbiome transplant, and her daughter became obese. It changes it on that level, and it's insane when you think about it. But basically, you are upgrading your digestive system or augmenting it in some fashion.
Yeah, and I think along with that is, with weight losses, people don't realize the gut has basically everything to do with it. If you're doing everything right, working out, but your diet's not there, like you have to take care of your gut first before anything else. And now, for everyone listening, you don't have to go get a fecal matter transplant. It has worked on extreme situations and cases, but most of the time, what it is eating the right foods. Eating fermented foods. You might have to supplement with a prebiotic or a probiotic, but some foods like we're talking resistant starches, bananas, flax, garlic, yams, a lot of foods with fiber in it can really help the gut because the bacteria feed off of that stuff. And what I've kind of read in research is you're not really feeding yourself, you're feeding the bacteria in your body, and that bacteria is then going to have a reaction and give your body kind of life.
Yeah. And most of your brain
Yeah,
cells,
yeah.
right, aren't they
Go ahead.
located in your gut microbiome? I feel like I read that somewhere where you have more brain cells in your gut microbiome than you do in your actual brain itself, which is completely
Yeah.
fascinating to me. So yeah, you've got to feed those things the right thing. Like if you get a fecal transplant and get implanted the perfect microbiome that's going to work with your system and just cure everything, but you don't change your diet, right? Then what are you actually what are you actually fixing, right? That those issues and those symptoms are just going to return themselves. So I mean that's really should be a big focus is we have to heal that permeability of the gut and just heal the lining, allow your body to be absorbed and all that. And then you've got people also who have these all these digestive issues and all these autoimmune diseases, and they're also obese at the same time. And think about this, right? How fat itself and just all your body carrying around that much body fat, it's extremely inflammatory. Like fat can just reproduce itself without any extra work. It takes nothing for fat to reproduce itself. So if you're constantly in a state of allowing your body to store fat and resistant to insulin, all these other things, you're just kind of you're just building brick by brick until this house is just eventually going to collapse. So you really have to fix the habits and the behaviors that are associated with creating those changes.
Yeah, it's and just to take a step back real quick, like fecal matter or yeah, fecal FMT procedure, the fecal transplant, that's really for extreme cases. People with C. difficile, and it's gonna not be
It's like a
something that
last
you would
ditch
seek
effort.
out
Yeah.
to do, but yeah, it would be like if you have autoimmune disease and you have tested positive for C. diff, then you should really look into this procedure. Other than that, everybody should be educating themselves on fasting and giving it a try because kind of like along with what you're saying there is with what we're eating and everything, we end up and with our schedule 3 times a day, 7 days a week, we end up in this state of just like chronic inflammation, right? We
Yeah.
never fully came back down to homeostasis. We never fully rested the digestive system so that it's ready and prepared for the next one. It absolutely is ready because the body's good like that, but you're just taking little nicks at your
And
armor in your digestive
think about this
system
too, right?
every
And
single day.
and I know I've experienced this, and I'm sure you guys may have, and other people out there who are listening even, is when you get that dump of like massive dump of dopamine and norepinephrine into your system, and makes you anxious, right? Or you're upset, or you're kind of stressed out. Where do you feel it? You feel nauseous, right? You feel it in the pit of your stomach. Just
Yep.
think about
That's
what
a
that's
great
actually
point.
doing to you from a biochemical level, like what's going on there. Like you're dumping massive amounts of like dopamine and norepinephrine in small amounts is like the feel good hormone. Like those will light up your system. We talked about it, the other week, and they will actually make you feel like you're riding on cloud nine, right? But if they're like in excess, because you're just chronically stressed out, or you're working out too intense, or you're putting like food into your system that is not meant to be there, or you're ingesting all these different types of toxins or breathing bad air, you're just putting yourself into a horrible place with your gut by creating this other chemical reactions that are now compounding the matter, and creating all these, like, well, there's all these endotoxins that are in your system anyway. And that's why the ketogenic diet has been so favorable for a lot of this, because of the high fat and the ability for all that fat to bind to all these endotoxins and be able to clear them out of your system. And then another one that I wanted to mention too, that I've read about, and I haven't actually tried it. I've only brushed my teeth with it, but is activated charcoal. And activated charcoal is supposed to be one of those
Mm.
substances that binds to those endotoxins in your gut and actually allows your body to flush that stuff out. A lot of people, they give that to you actually at the hospital if you have like a drug overdose, or if you have alcohol poisoning. They actually give you activated charcoal because it allows your body to bind those endotoxins to it, and then it removes it out of your system, and you can instantly feel like much more, much better by having some charcoal in your system. From what I've read, I haven't actually experienced it myself, but I've heard a lot of instances where it actually does the trick.
I haven't done the charcoal, but what I have done is fermented
Mm.
or pickled ginger, and that stuff really helps me at least. Like I noticed like if I am pretty full, um, from maybe I ate too much, maybe I had something that caused a little bit more inflammation, whatever, it will actually help speed up my digestive process. And I don't know on the cellular level if it's binding to inflammatory stuff or
Mm.
not, if it has anti-inflammatory products. But yeah, that's another one that just
Yeah,
made me
and
think
I mean, I
of.
think we should be supplementing with
Um,
probiotics too as much as we can, and more specifically in their natural form, like you said, by eating fermented foods. Eric mentioned fermented foods, things like kimchi. I maybe would stay away from things like Greek yogurt because of the dairy. Uh, but there are a lot of things out there, sauerkraut, things like that you can really use.
Right, and how much are you actually getting? Because sometimes you need excess of billions of these bacteria, and if you look at these prebiotics or probiotics, you're not getting near enough. So I always tell people, always whole food first, and then if you feel like you need some kind of supplementation, that go for it. Or if you're a person that really knows that you've had a lot of history with gut issues, then you can kind of start messing around with supplementation right off the bat.
no, that's a great point. Yeah, like get it from real foods. Don't just buy the probiotics supplements because just like every other supplement, it's just easily going right through your system. It's kind of a waste. Um, yeah, yeah. Um, I think that kind of sums us up. I mean, I want to mention that anybody who has autoimmune dysfunction, whether IBD, IBS, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, Hashimoto's, whatever, you gotta educate yourself a little bit more about your disease, and then you have to just start listening to your body's feedback and understanding how it works. There's not going to be the food itself that causes inflammation. It's going to be the lack of the enzyme, the appropriate enzyme to break down the food that will then cause the whatever it is to sit and cause damage in your digestive system. So not only are you not able to absorb good nutrients because you're stopping the digestive process, you're putting a speed bump there, but you're causing damage, like actual damage to the wall um, of your intestine and your colon. A couple names to mention are Dr. Gundry. He talks about the plant paradox and how seeds and plants are actually not the best thing for us, and how to pick the right ones. Dr. Mercola is another good resource, and then Dr. Terry Walls, or I don't know if she's a doctor, but Terry Walls. She made the Walls Protocol, and she has MS, and she essentially cured her MS and is functional day to day. You wouldn't be able to tell she has MS essentially through her diet. So a diet plays the biggest role. I can't stress enough the analogy of your digestive system being the interactive feature with the cells and the organisms around you, from the system, aka you, to the environment, aka everything else outside of you. Um, that pretty much sums up everything I want to say. You guys have any closing
I
statements?
do. I would just say if if you've been dealing with something for a long time and you think that's just the way you are, like, oh, this is just I just have irritable bowel syndrome, or I just have eczema. I would really strongly suggest that you don't just kind of throw the towel in and say this is just how I am. Go get tested, and there's a lot of different functional medicine practitioners out there that do much deeper diagnostics than your general practitioner will do. General practitioner, even if they were able to order the types of labs and things that would be required to get the type of information you need to make nutritional recommendations, they wouldn't know how to break down that information anyway. Functional medicine practitioners are trained to focus on those labs specifically. For example, they'll do a combination urine, stool, saliva, and blood. And what they'll be able to gather from that, I've done it before through Boston Heart Diagnostics, and it's just an incredible amount of information that you can get. They gave me a full report back from all those different samples I gave. And you essentially get not just what your nutritional deficiencies are, but there's a daily recommended intake by the FDA that they have on the back of your supplement bottle. They will actually look and see what level is in your system and give you a specific recommendation. You may need to take more than what the daily the recommended dose is for that supplement. Take vitamin D, for example. They will actually give you a very specific dosage that you should take to get yourself back up to the level that's necessary. And once you have good balance of all these different minerals and nutrients in your system, and your gut is actually in balance, just think about how much better you can feel. So I strongly suggest, there's a lot of doctors out there that are taking insurance. I think I got the testing for $150 with insurance. And when you think about what that cost and the information I was able to get from it, that's, you can't put a price tag on that kind of information, to give you the tools and the information that you need to make better decisions on making yourself feel better. If you don't have energy, if you're not feeling, lively throughout the day, or you're feeling lethargic all the time, or you're feeling like, you know, gut issues all the time, that's not normal. And you definitely, don't have to accept it, is what I'm saying. So go get tested, and reach out to us if you want a referral. I definitely know some people in the Boston area, at least, that can do these testings. So
I might have to go check out one of those myself. Eric, do you have any closing statements over there?
I after that, I think Mike just basically summed up everything people should be doing. So I am good on my end.
You just want to make the mic drop sound effect? No, I'm just kidding. So, in next week's show, we will be diving into the bench press. What you see everybody waiting for
Monday
at the
morning,
gym Monday
yeah.
morning.
I always squat on Mondays because the squat rack is always open.
Yeah, same. Same. I squat on Mondays. All right. Let's think fitness life over and out.